Hey YouTube, how's it going? I've been away for a little bit. Spent last week out archery deer hunting. Had a good time. Got the freezer restocked, so it's time to get back working on the car. Sorry for the little break, but the beginning of the archery season is like my little holiday. So I always enjoy doing that. But let's get you updated on what I've been working on here. First thing is I cut out the lower A-pillar where the lower door hinge attaches to. I've got the piece that I cut out right here. The bottom of that pillar was pretty rotted anyway. You can kind of see in among all this primer, the weld-through primer I sprayed on, but you can see some of the rust and crust still on there on some of the pieces I haven't replaced yet. But this inner piece is like sandwiched between the A-pillar and the cowl section here. And the cowl was in good shape, and the A-pillar needed some work, so I decided to get to it by going through the cowl instead of cutting out a piece that didn't need repair. But yeah, I had to get in here and cut out a section that was on this inner portion, which is where just a bunch of leaves and dirt had fallen down in the cowl and rotted it from the back side. So I cut that out, got in there and coated it as best I could with the rust converter paint, the Eastwood rust encapsulator, and then put the patch over that, welded in. I haven't ground that down, and I don't know if I'm going to smooth it out because this is not really going to be seen. And I did the same thing to the bottom side of the pocket here that holds the like nut or a tapped plate that the inner part of the door hinge attaches to. So you know, I made sure it drops in and still fits, because just the bottom side of this, so much stuff had collected there, it just rotted right out. So anyway, next up here is to trim down the replacement panel a little bit closer, because I don't need that much height to it. And then put that over here and scribe it and get it welded in place. I might fix this lower section now. I could also do it when I cut the floor out, because this is attached to the inner rocker and it's just barely holding on here. We'll see. Figure out which way I want to do it, which order. But whichever way I do it, you guys will see it. Also, I pulled the trim off the windshield because it was all busted into pieces. The glass was, and I wanted to take a look and see how the pinch seam here looked, where the gasket to hold the windshield mount on, and it's actually in really good shape. On this passenger side, there's a little bit of crustiness, but really not bad. And you can actually kind of see the original blue paint that was in there. And it was kind of neat when I pulled that rubber off. You can see a little bit of this white residue as the original sealant. And I pulled that off, and it was actually still soft and pliable. So not all of it. In the areas where it was a little water damaged and rusty, like here, that sealant had gotten hard. But on the bottom side, where the rubber was protecting it pretty well and it didn't, get wet, it actually stayed really soft and it was still functioning in that spot. So that was pretty cool to see. On the driver's side, I did find a little bit of rust damage that I'll have to repair. Not too bad. There's a little bit of pitting that's worked its way through here and here, and then some right here as well that I've got to cut out. But all this gets covered over by that windshield gasket surround, so you really won't see any of it. I couldn't see it before I pulled that gasket off. There's a little bit here too. So a little bit of patching, but not too bad really, just a couple of spots. So I've seen worse on a lot newer vehicles. So I usually work on C10s from like the 60s, and those have a fair amount of rust issues, and they're 10 years newer than this one, so it's not too bad. yeah, I pulled the door off, obviously, to get that A-pillar torn apart. So when I get the A-pillar back, then I want to get the door mounted back on so I can set the panel gap to the rocker panel and get that rocker finished up, because I really want to have the perimeter, you know, solid before I cut the floor out and then lift it up to put the new floor in. So just kind of working in stages, but today's a gorgeous day to be out here working. It's been between 85, 90 degrees for just weeks and weeks on end. Haven't had a cool break, and all I've got is a little window AC unit here with no insulation in these walls in my shop. So it gets pretty toasty. You know, I would have to leave the AC running all day for it to be cool getting out here, and I just don't want to waste that energy. So, you know, I haven't been doing quite as much heavy projects with it just being that warm. But today is like 70 degrees, 71 for a high, so it finally cooled off and broke. So I'm gonna get going, get my jacket on and start cutting and grinding and burning in some new panels. So follow along. Got to a stopping point. My wife came and told me tacos are ready, so I'm gonna take a break here and then get back at it after dinner's done. But just a quick summary before I head out. I decided to cut straight across the bottom portion of this inner support for the A-pillar, and I'll weld in a section at like when I cut the floor out, and after I get the A-pillar and the rocker on, I'll put it on the inside of the rocker panel. And then I trimmed off where the original lower portion of the A-pillar was spot welded to this flange, this support piece, and I'm cutting off this last little piece left hanging on there, and get that all trimmed out of the way. And then I'll trim this panel down a little smaller, fit it up, scribe it, and make a cut to this piece after I've got that panel all fit up, and get that one burned in. So I'll get that done after dinner, but right now it's time to go eat. Catch you later. As you saw there, I was using a box cutter to make my scribe line around the patch panel. I like it because it makes a really crisp, sharp line on the edge of the panel that I can follow with the cutoff wheel and get really close. I've got a distance that's a fixed distance from the opening of the upper mount location to the opening for the lower mount location. And I actually wrote that down here, 14¼ inches from the lower portion here to the upper portion of the lower one. That way I can keep that vertical distance set. You can see the reflection, pretty shiny there. I feel it pretty good with the fingernail as well. I might go back with the roll-lock disc and clean up the paint here, clean that off, but you can still see that sharp scribe line, and then follow it again with a fine Sharpie so you can see the dark lines standing out on the bright metal underneath to make that final sharp cut. I really want to get this butted up well. My plan is to TIG weld the lower A-pillar patch here instead of MIG weld. I MIG welded the inner piece because I wasn't able to get to the back side of this structure, and it's a little boogery here, I know, but the metal was pretty dirty on the back side and I just wasn't able to get in there and fully clean it out. So MIG welds are a little more tolerant of dirty metal. It's still not great. You'll get some porosity bubbling. If you get over a rusty spot, it'll pull that in. But it's better than trying to TIG weld that area, because when you go over a spot like that with your TIG, the weld puddle basically wants to explode up and dull your tungsten out, and it's a real pain in the butt to fight that stuff. And to cut everything back to perfectly good metal is really not feasible in here, because I don't want to completely deconstruct the cowl just to get in there. So I'm fixing the major rust problems, some light surface stuff, or even some medium levels of corrosion. I'll get in with a wire brush as best I can and coat it with a rust encapsulator, or spray in some rust converter. If I can't get a brush in there with the encapsulator, I'll at least hose it down with a rust converter, which will convert that surface rust, or even some mild scaly rust, into different iron oxide that won't be continuing to corrode, and get as much, maybe go in there with some of that Eastwood internal frame coating would be a good thing. I could fish the hose down from this hole all the way into the bottom corner here, and maybe pull this plug out and feed it through on this side just to make sure it's fully sealed up. But I wasn't going to be able to cut out all the sheet metal in there. It was just a little too much work to do for. I can work my way around it and feel pretty confident in it anyway. So usually with your spot weld cutter, this is the panel I'm leaving. Normally you would want to come with that cutter from the other side and not make these big holes, because that's going to be on the inside of that panel. Be difficult to get in there and fill all those, but I'll see what I can do. Just coat them, whatever. I'd still rather have these holes in that rusty metal piece, but just might look a little interesting in there. Maybe I'll get some inspiration if I can feed my torch up underneath and still kind of get a look. I could fill in those rosettes, or yeah, just leave them. We'll see how it goes. But I needed to use that to get that out of there. From the geometry of this piece that I was cutting out, if you see, the reason why I did it is because it was so close into the edge on that corner, I couldn't really get the cutter in from this side to cut those spot welds, because the cutter edge would want to just ride and push over too far. It wouldn't be cutting in the right spot. But yeah, definitely wanted to get this piece out of there. It's a little crusty. So anyway, back to it again. Well, I'm done giving her for tonight. You know, you just lose time dealing with little details and stuff. For me, that was the captive nuts for the door hinges. So these are the nuts that I pulled out of the original lower panel. So I had to bend these tabs straight, put them in this new squared off hole, and fold them back over, which took a little while, a bit of hammer work to get them to fold in there, but they're nice and snug now. When I take this panel in, I'll probably just put a little tack on a couple of these just to hold them in place, since I've fatigued the metal a little bit by bending it back and forth. You can see how they look originally here. These captive nuts, kind of loose in there, but got it fit up how I want. Pretty well here. Got a little bit of trimming to do, but it's not too bad. Radiuses are pretty close to lining up the way I want here on this stamping. The edge will need a little trimming there, and I might have to make a little pie cut piece down here. It's just a little bit wider at that point than the original pillar there, but I think I can make it fit. Where this edge meets up, I think I'll drill a couple holes and put some clecos in there to hold that side and help me get everything aligned. And got a little bit of a gap at the top, but that's not too bad. And this metal's a lot thicker than most of the other patch panels on here. I mean, that's some hefty stuff. Who's this? Structural panel. It's supposed to hold the weight of the door swinging, and kids swinging on the door, you know, just whatever it's gonna see. So it's got to be a strong piece, so it's a heavier stamping than the other one. So I'm glad that I don't have to do a lot of massaging to it, because it's difficult to hammer something that thick into shape. But then I'll come back on another evening here and finish welding this thing in. But I'm going to call it quits for this video, and then I'll do that welding on another video. So catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.